The morning sun rose over New Haven, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was a beautiful planet, far from Earth but still feeling like home to the humans who lived there. The colony was small, just a few hundred people trying to build a new life among the stars. Jake Morrison stood outside the Frontier Youth Academy, checking his backpack one more time. He was a teacher here and today was special. Today he was taking 15 of his students on a camping trip into the forests that surrounded the colony. It was supposed to teach them survival skills, how to live off the land if they ever needed to. Jake was in his late 40s, with short brown hair that was starting to show gray at the sides. He had calm blue eyes that seemed to notice everything, even when he appeared relaxed. The children loved him because he was patient and kind, never raising his voice even when they made mistakes. He made learning fun, turning every lesson into an adventure. The students began arriving with their parents. Amy Carter was first, a 12-year-old girl with bright eyes and a curious mind. She was always asking questions, always wanting to know more. Her parents hugged her goodbye, reminding her to listen to Mr. Morrison. Lucas Bennett came next, an 11-year-old boy who loved science and technology. He had packed extra equipment, including a small tablet that could identify plants and animals. His mother kissed his forehead and waved as he joined Amy. Sophie Turner arrived with her father. She was only 10 years old, the youngest in the group, but she had earned her place by working hard in class. She was small but brave, never backing down from a challenge. Danny Price showed up last, a 13-year-old who was tall for his age and naturally athletic. He liked to watch out for the younger kids, making sure they were okay. Jake appreciated that quality in him. In total, 15 children stood ready for the adventure. They wore hiking clothes and carried backpacks filled with supplies. Their faces showed excitement mixed with a little nervousness. Most of them had never spent a night away from the colony. Helen Morris, the academy headmistress, came out to see them off. She was a kind woman in her 50s who treated every student like her own child. "You all be safe out there," she said, smiling warmly. "Listen to Mr. Morrison and you'll have a wonderful time." Jake nodded to her. "We'll be back in 3 days, Helen, don't worry." Ben Crawford, the colony administrator, was there too. He looked more worried than Helen. "Jake, are you sure about this? The forests are pretty far from help if something goes wrong." Jake's expression didn't change. "We'll be fine, Ben. I've scouted the area 3 times. It's safe." Ben still looked uncertain, but he nodded. Everyone in the colony trusted Jake. He had been teaching here for 5 years and he had never let anyone down. The group set off into the forest, following a trail that led away from the colony. The trees on New Haven were taller than earth trees, with purple leaves that rustled in the gentle breeze. Strange birds called from the branches, their songs unfamiliar but beautiful. Jake led the way, moving with an easy confidence that made the children feel safe. He pointed out interesting plants and showed them animal tracks in the soft dirt. He taught them how to tell direction by looking at the moss growing on the trees, and how to find water by listening for the sound of streams. Amy walked near the front, watching Jake carefully. There was something different about their teacher, something she couldn't quite explain. He moved too smoothly, too quietly for a regular person. His eyes were always scanning the forest, seeing things before anyone else noticed them. "Mr. Morrison," she said, catching up to walk beside him. "How do you always know when something's coming? Like earlier, you stopped before we even heard that animal." Jake smiled at her. "Practice, Amy. When you spend enough time in nature, you learn to read the signs. The way birds stop singing when a predator is near, the way the wind carries scents. You just have to pay attention." Lucas was fascinated by everything. He used his tablet to scan plants, learning which ones were safe to eat and which ones were poisonous. "This is amazing," he said to Sophie. "This planet has completely different biology from Earth, but some things work the same way." Sophie nodded, though she was more interested in the practical skills. She asked Jake to show her how to tie proper knots and how to start a fire without matches. Jake was patient with her, demonstrating each technique slowly until she got it right. By afternoon, they reached their camping spot. It was a clearing near a small stream, surrounded by tall trees that provided shade and shelter. The sound of running water was peaceful, and the air smelled clean and fresh. "All right, everyone," Jake said, setting down his backpack. "First rule of camping, always set up your shelter before you do anything else. If weather comes in, you need to be ready." He divided the children into groups and helped them set up their tents. He showed them how to pick level ground and how to secure the stakes properly. Danny helped the younger kids, making sure their tents wouldn't collapse in the night. Once camp was established, Jake taught them how to gather firewood and build a proper campfire. Fire is your friend in the wilderness, he explained. It keeps you warm, cooks your food, and keeps animals away. But you have to respect it. Never leave a fire unattended. As evening approached, Jake prepared dinner for the group. He had brought some supplies from the colony, but he also showed them edible plants he had gathered along the trail. The children sat around the fire, eating and talking about their day. "Mr. Morrison," Danny asked, "did you go camping a lot when you were younger?" Jake stirred the pot over the fire, his expression distant for a moment. "Yeah, I did. Spent a lot of time outdoors learning to survive in different environments, like where?" Lucas asked, leaning forward with interest. "Oh, lots of places. Mountains, deserts, jungles. Each environment teaches you different lessons." Jake's voice was casual, but Amy noticed he didn't give specific details. Sophie pointed to a scar on Jake's forearm that was visible below his rolled-up sleeve. "How did you get that scar, Mr. Morrison?" Jake glanced at it and shrugged. "Old accident. Happened a long time ago." Amy had noticed that Jake had several scars. There was another on his neck, partially hidden by his collar, and she had seen one on his hand before. For a teacher, he had a lot of old injuries. The night grew darker and the stars came out. New Haven's sky was spectacular, filled with constellations that didn't exist from Earth's view. Jake pointed out different stars and told stories about space exploration. The children listened, captivated by his words. Around the fire, Jake noticed things the children didn't. His eyes flickered to the forest edge occasionally, tracking sounds that were too faint for young ears to hear. His posture seemed relaxed, but there was a readiness to him, like a coiled spring waiting to release. Amy saw him check a small device on his wrist, something that looked more advanced than a regular watch. His expression changed for just a second, a shadow crossing his face before the calm teacher returned. "Everything okay, Mr. Morrison?" she asked quietly. Jake looked at her and smiled. "Everything's fine, Amy. Just checking the weather forecast. Looks like we'll have clear skies tomorrow." She wasn't sure she believed him, but she didn't press the issue. As the fire burned down, Jake sent the children to their tents. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we're going to learn tracking and navigation. It'll be a busy day." The students said goodnight and crawled into their tents, excited whispers floating on the night air. Soon the camp grew quiet except for the crackling of the dying fire and the sounds of the forest. Jake sat alone by the embers, staring into the darkness. He pulled out the device on his wrist and checked it again. There was a message there, an encrypted one that had come through earlier. He read it quickly, his jaw tightening slightly. The message was from someone he hadn't heard from in years, warning him about increased military activity in the sector. Tensions were rising between humanity and some of the alien empires. The Vakrian supremacy in particular was being aggressive, pushing into territories that didn't belong to them. Jake deleted the message and tried to push the worry from his mind. He was retired from that life. He was a teacher now, responsible for children, not soldiers. This camping trip was supposed to be simple and safe, far from any galactic politics. But old instincts died hard. He had chosen this remote location carefully, with multiple escape routes and defensive positions, even though he told himself it was just good planning. The cave system half a mile from camp, the high ground to the north, the stream that could mask movement. He had noted them all. He looked at the tents where his students slept peacefully. Amy with her endless questions, Lucas with his love of learning, Sophie with her determination, Danny with his protective nature. They were good kids, all of them. They deserved to grow up in a peaceful galaxy, never knowing the horrors that Jake had seen. Jake finally lay down near the fire, but his sleep was light. Years of training had taught him to rest while remaining aware of his surroundings. Part of his mind was always listening, always ready. The forest around them was calm. Night animals moved through the trees and the stream continued its gentle song. The stars wheeled overhead and New Haven's small moon rose slowly in the sky. Everything seemed perfect and peaceful. The children were safe, learning. High above New Haven in the darkness of space, 3 Vakrian warships moved into position. They were sleek vessels designed for quick strikes and overwhelming force. Inside the command ship, War leader Zekthor studied the planet below with his cold reptilian eyes. The Vakrians were a proud warrior race. They stood over 7 feet tall with scales that ranged from dark green to black. Their culture valued strength and conquest above all else. Zekthor had led many successful raids, and he saw New Haven as an easy target. "Report," Zekthor commanded, his voice hissing through sharp teeth. Sub-Commander Vrel approached, holding a data tablet. He was smaller than Zekthor, but just as dangerous. "The human colony has minimal defenses, war leader. A few security officers with basic weapons. No military presence. No orbital defenses. They are completely vulnerable." Zekthor's mouth curved into what might have been a smile. "The humans think they are safe this far from their core worlds. They spread themselves thin, building these small colonies without protection. It makes our job easier." "What are your orders?" Vril asked. "We attack at dusk. Destroy their communications first so they cannot call for help. Then eliminate their security forces and key structures. We will send a message to all of humanity. The frontier belongs to the Vakrian supremacy. Leave our territory or face destruction." Vrel nodded and turned to relay the orders. But then he paused, looking at his scanner. "War leader, I'm detecting a small thermal signature in the forest approximately 20 kilometers from the main colony. It appears to be a group of humans." Zekthor moved to look at the display. The thermal imaging showed multiple small heat signatures clustered together, and one larger one nearby. "How many?" 16 total. 15 appear to be juvenile humans based on their size. 1 adult. A cruel gleam entered Zekthor's eyes. "There are young ones camping in the forest with a single guardian. Perfect. Send a hunter team to deal with them. Let the humans know that even their children are not safe from our reach." Vrel hesitated. In Vakrian culture, attacking the young was not honorable. But questioning the war leader was dangerous, and Vrel valued his position. "As you command. I will dispatch 3 hunter squads. 12 warriors should be more than sufficient." "Good. Have them move in after we begin the main attack. The confusion will prevent any rescue attempt. Eliminate all witnesses." The warships began their descent toward New Haven. In the colony, people were finishing their evening routines, unaware of the danger approaching from the sky. Back at the forest camp, the second day had been wonderful. Jake had taught the children how to track animals by reading signs in the forest. They learned to move quietly, to observe without disturbing nature, and to understand the behavior of different creatures. Amy had gotten particularly good at spotting tracks. She found where a large animal, similar to a deer, had passed through recently. Jake praised her observation skills and showed her how to determine which direction the animal had gone and how long ago it had passed. Lucas used his tablet to catalog everything they found. He was building a database of New Haven's wildlife, complete with photos and notes. Sophie helped him, sketching pictures of plants they encountered. Danny led the younger children on a short exploration of the stream. They found interesting rocks and watched small fish-like creatures swimming in the clear water. Everyone was having fun, learning and enjoying the wilderness. As evening approached, Jake checked his wrist device again. This time his calm expression cracked. His eyes went hard and his jaw clenched. Amy, who was helping prepare dinner, noticed the change immediately. "Mr. Morrison, is something wrong?" Jake's finger moved across the device screen, reading rapidly. An alert had come through the colony's emergency network. The message was brief but terrifying. "Under attack. Multiple hostiles. Communications down. Seek shelter." For 3 seconds, Jake stood perfectly still. His mind raced through options, calculating probabilities and threats with the speed of long training. The camp was 20 kilometers from the colony. Too far to help, too far to retreat to safety. They were isolated and vulnerable, but then his training took over. The panicked thought stopped, replaced by cold clarity. He had a mission now: protect the children. "Everyone, listen carefully," Jake said, his voice completely different from his usual teacher tone. It was commanding, sharp, leaving no room for argument. "We need to move now. Grab your packs and stay close to me. No talking. No noise. Move." The children stared at him, confused by the sudden change. They had never heard him sound like this. "Mr. Morrison, what's happening?" Sophie asked, fear creeping into her voice. "I'll explain later. Right now you need to trust me and do exactly what I say. Lives depend on it." Amy, help Sophie with her pack. Danny, make sure the younger kids stay together. Lucas, leave the tablet. We need to move fast. The urgency in his voice made them act without further questions. They grabbed their essential gear and formed a group. Jake scanned the forest with eyes that suddenly seemed to see everything. He was no longer the patient teacher. He was something else, something focused and dangerous. He led them away from the camp, moving quickly but quietly through the trees. The children struggled to keep up with his pace. He seemed to know exactly where he was going, taking a path through the forest that none of them had seen before. After 10 minutes of rapid movement, they reached a rocky hillside. Jake led them to what looked like a crack in the rocks barely visible behind some bushes. It was the entrance to a cave system. Inside, Jake ordered, all the way to the back. There's a chamber about 50 feet in. Go there and wait. Mr. Morrison, you're scaring us, Amy said, though she was already helping Sophie toward the cave entrance. Jake's expression softened for just a moment. I know and I'm sorry, but I need you to be brave right now. The colony is under attack. Bad people are coming and they might be looking for us too. I need to keep you safe. Danny's eyes went wide. Attack? Who's attacking? Aliens. I don't know which faction yet, but that doesn't matter right now. What matters is that you all stay hidden and stay quiet. Can you do that for me? The children nodded, fear clear on their faces but trusting their teacher completely. They filed into the cave using their flashlights to navigate the dark passage. Jake waited until they reached the back chamber. He could hear Sophie crying softly and Amy comforting her. His heart ached, but he couldn't let emotion cloud his judgment right now. He walked into the cave until he reached where the children were huddled together. 15 pairs of frightened eyes looked up at him. Jake knelt down, making himself their level. Listen to me very carefully, he said, his voice gentle but firm. Stay here. Do not come out. Do not make a sound. No matter what you hear outside, you stay hidden. Do you understand? But what about you? Lucas asked. Where are you going? I'm going to make sure nothing finds this cave. I'm going to keep you safe. Are you going to fight them? Danny asked, his voice shaking slightly. Jake looked at the boy. If I have to. Sophie's small voice came from where she sat, pressed against Amy. Will you be okay, Mr. Morrison? Jake smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. I'm going to be just fine, sweetheart. They won't hurt me. What he didn't say was the truth. He wasn't worried about them hurting him. He was worried about what he was going to have to become to protect these children. The thing he had tried to bury, the killer he had worked so hard to leave behind, was about to wake up. Mr. Morrison, Amy said quietly. Who are you, really? Jake met her eyes. She deserved some truth. Someone who used to do a very different job. Someone who knows how to survive situations like this. Someone who will do whatever it takes to make sure you all get home safely. He stood up and moved toward the cave entrance. Remember, stay quiet, stay hidden, no matter what. As he left, Amy whispered to the others. He's not just a teacher, is he? Danny shook his head slowly. No, I don't think he ever was just a teacher. Outside the cave, Jake moved back through the forest toward their original camp. His mind was completely focused now, falling into patterns trained over years of combat operations. He analyzed terrain, identified defensive positions, calculated sight lines and approach routes. Through the trees, he heard them, footsteps, too heavy to be human, moving with military precision. Alien voices speaking in a language he recognized, Vakrian. He had fought them before, years ago, in conflicts most people didn't even know had happened. Jake climbed a tree with practiced ease, finding a position where he could observe without being seen. Through the branches, he spotted them. 12 Vakrian warriors, heavily armed, moving in tactical formation toward his camp. They were hunters, trained killers looking for easy prey. They thought they were hunting children. They thought this would be simple. They were wrong. Jake watched them surround the empty camp, saw their confusion when they found no one there. One of them barked orders in their harsh language. They would spread out to search. They would track his students. Jake's hands flexed. He had no weapons except a survival knife. The Vakrians had advanced energy rifles and armor. By every tactical measure, he was outmatched. But Jake Morrison had spent 20 years in special operations before retiring to teaching. He had earned a reputation that made enemy commanders fear to speak his code name. He had survived situations that... The Vakrian warrior moved through the forest, his rifle raised and ready. His name was Kreth, and he was confident in his abilities. He had hunted dangerous creatures on many worlds. A few human children and their guardian would be easy targets. Kreth never saw Jake Morrison. He never heard him. One moment he was scanning the trees ahead, and the next moment strong hands grabbed him from behind. There was a brief struggle, completely silent, and then Kreth crumpled to the ground unconscious. Jake took the alien's rifle and ammunition, then dragged the body into thick bushes where it wouldn't be found easily. One down. 11 to go. Jake moved like a shadow through the forest. Years of training had taught him how to use terrain, how to move without sound, how to become invisible even in open ground. The Vakrians were skilled hunters, but Jake had hunted things far more dangerous than them. The second warrior died without even knowing Jake existed. A thrown rock distracted him, and when he turned to investigate the sound, Jake was already there. The alien's weapon joined Jake's growing collection. In their command ship above, Zekthor watched his tactical display with growing concern. 2 of his warriors had stopped responding. Their life signs were still active, but they weren't answering communication attempts. Vrel, what is happening down there? The sub-commander checked his displays, his scaled brow furrowing. I am not certain, war leader. 2 soldiers are not responding. They may have equipment malfunctions. Both at the same time? Check their positions. Vrel zoomed in on the area. The 2 missing warriors were nowhere near each other. They had been part of different search patterns. This is unusual. I will contact the squad leader. On the ground, the Vakrian squad leader received Vrel's transmission. Report your status. We have lost contact with 2 warriors. The squad leader replied, his voice tense. I am regrouping the others. Something is wrong here. It is 1 adult human and some children. You have 10 warriors remaining. Find them and complete your mission. The squad leader wasn't so confident anymore. 2 experienced hunters didn't just disappear. He began pulling his warriors back into tighter formation, abandoning the search pattern. Safety in numbers. Jake watched them regroup from a position high in a tree. He counted heads. 10 Vakrians now bunched together and alert. They knew something was hunting them, even if they didn't understand what. Good. Fear would make them sloppy. He aimed the stolen Vakrian rifle carefully. The weapon was unfamiliar, but Jake had trained with hundreds of different weapons during his military career. He understood the basics. The power cell showed full charge. The scope was clear. He adjusted for the slight difference in weight distribution. Jake took a slow breath and squeezed the trigger. The rifle made a sharp crackling sound and one of the Vakrians fell, a smoking hole in his armor. Before the others could react, Jake fired twice more. 2 more aliens dropped. The remaining 7 Vakrians scattered, diving for cover and returning fire. Energy bolts tore through the forest, setting leaves on fire and scorching tree trunks. But Jake was already gone, moving to a new position before they could track him. The squad leader roared orders. Defensive circle! Watch all directions! The human has our weapons. High above, Zekthor slammed his fist on his command console. 5 warriors down now. Half his hunting party eliminated in less than 15 minutes. What kind of human is this? Vrel was rapidly searching through human military databases. Something he should have done before the attack. The information was limited. Humans kept much of their military history classified, but there were some records available, particularly about individuals who had gained reputations. War leader, Vrel said slowly, his voice uncertain. I am finding some concerning information. What information? There are humans designated as special operations soldiers. They are trained for combat far beyond normal military personnel. Some of their individual combat records are... Vrel paused, reading the numbers with disbelief. War leader, some of these humans have elimination counts in the hundreds. Zekthor scoffed. Propaganda. Humans exaggerate their warriors' abilities to intimidate enemies. Perhaps. But there is a classified file here with high-level security warnings. The file is mostly redacted, but I can see a name. Lieutenant Colonel Jacob Morrison. Codename. An alert interrupted him. 3 more warriors had just gone offline. In the forest, Jake had circled around the Vakrians' defensive position. While they watched for him to attack from the front, he had approached from behind. He didn't use the rifle this time. Too loud would give away his position. Instead, he used the environment. A carefully placed tripwire connected to a heavy dead branch. A Vakrian warrior, backing up while watching the trees, triggered it. The branch swung down with crushing force, knocking him unconscious. Jake was on him in seconds, securing the weapon and disappearing before the others noticed. 2 more fell to similar tactics. Jake used every trick he had learned over 20 years of combat. He turned the forest itself into a weapon, using natural features to create traps and ambush points. The Vakrians were formidable warriors, but they were fighting on Jake's terms now, in an environment he had memorized and prepared. Only 4 Vakrians remained now, including the squad leader. They stood back to back in a small clearing, their weapons sweeping in all directions. They had stopped trying to complete their mission. Now they were just trying to survive. "Command," the squad leader called desperately. "We need immediate extraction. We are under attack by... I don't know what this is. It's taking us apart." Vrel's voice came back, tight with concern. "Hold your position. We are sending reinforcements. There's no time." This thing is... The transmission cut off as Jake's rifle bolt caught the squad leader in the chest. The remaining 3 warriors panicked, breaking their defensive formation and running. It was exactly what Jake wanted. Separated, they were easier targets. He took down 2 more as they fled. The last warrior made it almost 50 yards before Jake caught up to him. The Vakrian turned to fire, but Jake was faster. A precise strike to the warrior's weapon hand made him drop the rifle, and a follow-up blow rendered him unconscious. Jake stood among the fallen Vakrians, breathing hard. 12 hunters eliminated in less than 20 minutes. He checked each one, confirming they were unconscious but alive. He wasn't a murderer. These were enemy combatants who had threatened children, but he didn't have to kill them to stop them. He gathered their weapons and communications equipment, moving quickly. There would be more coming. He needed to prepare. In the cave, the children heard none of this. They huddled together in the darkness, following Mr. Morrison's instructions. Amy kept her arm around Sophie, who was still crying softly. Lucas tried to stay calm by mentally reviewing what they had learned about survival. Danny positioned himself at the front of the group, ready to protect the younger kids if necessary. "How long do we have to stay here?" one of the younger boys whispered. "Until Mr. Morrison comes back for us," Amy replied firmly. "He said to stay quiet, so we stay quiet. But what if he doesn't come back?" Sophie asked in a tiny voice. Amy hugged her tighter. "He'll come back," he promised. Above the planet, Zekthor was no longer confident. 12 warriors, all highly trained, had been defeated by a single human. Vrel had finally managed to pull the full classified file on Jacob Morrison, and what he read made his blood run cold. "War leader, you need to see this." Zekthor looked at the screen. The file showed a younger Jake Morrison in military uniform. The list of operations he had participated in was extensive. Black operations, rescue missions, counterinsurgency, hostage extraction, and deep reconnaissance. The combat statistics were staggering. 247 confirmed hostile eliminations across 15 different war zones. 43 commendations for valor, 7 times officially declared killed in action, only to reappear months later. Psychological evaluation notes warned that subjects showed no fear, response in combat situations, and possessed an unusual ability to remain calm under extreme stress. The final note in the file was stamped with the highest security classification. Subject deemed too effective for continued active service. Combat capabilities pose risk of creating international incidents. Recommended for immediate retirement. Codename Reaper to be retired with individual. Vrel looked at his commander. "War leader, we sent hunters after the humans Reaper." Zekthor felt something he rarely experienced, genuine fear. "Send all remaining ground forces. I want that human eliminated now." "All forces? That will leave the colony attack force with minimal support." "I don't care. That human is the priority now." 20 more Vakrian warriors began loading into dropships, preparing to descend to the forest. Their mission was simple: find and kill Jake Morrison. But Jake was already preparing for them. He had dragged all the unconscious Vakrians into a pile and bound them with their own equipment. He set up defensive positions around the cave entrance, using the stolen weapons to create overlapping fields of fire. He took a moment to check on the children, appearing at the cave entrance so quickly and quietly that they all jumped. "Everyone okay?" Jake asked, his voice gentle despite the situation. "Mr. Morrison." Sophie ran to him and hugged his leg. "You came back." "Of course I did. I promised." He knelt down so he was at their level. Jake heard the dropships before he saw them, the high-pitched whine of alien engines cutting through the evening air. He counted 3 ships, each capable of carrying about 8 warriors. 24 more enemies plus the ground forces already attacking the colony. The Vakrians were taking him seriously now. The first dropship landed in a clearing 200 yards from the cave. Warriors poured out, their weapons ready, moving in proper military formation. They were being cautious now, treating Jake like a real threat instead of easy prey. Jake watched from his elevated position in a large tree. He had set up his ambush carefully, using the captured weapons to create a deadly crossfire zone. The Vakrians were walking right into it. He waited until all 8 warriors were in the kill zone. Then he opened fire. The first 3 bolts from his rifle dropped 3 warriors before they could react. Jake immediately rolled to a new position as return fire tore through where he had been. He came up firing, taking down 2 more. The remaining 3 scattered for cover, but Jake had prepared for that. He had rigged several Vakrian grenades in the underbrush, triggered by simple tripwires. An alien warrior backed into one and the explosion sent him flying. 2 left from the first ship. Jake flanked them, moving through the forest like a ghost. One warrior never saw him coming. The other managed to get off a shot that nearly hit Jake, scorching his shoulder, but Jake's return fire was accurate. The warrior fell. The second dropship's crew heard the fighting and approached more carefully. Their leader was smarter, using proper cover and advancing slowly. But Jake had been fighting smart opponents his entire career. He led them into a section of forest where the terrain favored him. Steep slopes, thick vegetation, and fallen trees created natural obstacles. The Vakrians struggled to maintain formation, and Jake picked them off one by one. A warrior got close enough to see Jake clearly for the first time. The alien raised his weapon, but Jake was faster. His combat knife, taken from one of the earlier warriors, flashed in the fading light. The Vakrian dropped his rifle and fell backward, clutching at a wounded arm. Jake didn't kill him. He disarmed him, disabled him, and moved on. Every warrior he took down was one less threat to his students, but he wasn't a murderer. He was a soldier doing his job. The third dropship tried a different approach. They landed far from the fighting and attempted to flank Jake's position. But Jake had already anticipated that move. He had scouted this entire area days ago, noting every possible approach and escape route. He fell back toward the cave, drawing the warriors away from where his students were hidden. The aliens followed, thinking they were pursuing a fleeing enemy. Instead, Jake was leading them into more prepared positions. An hour after the dropships arrived, 24 more Vakrian warriors were down. Some were unconscious. Others were injured and unable to fight. None were dead, but all were defeated. Jake stood among the fallen enemies, breathing hard, blood from minor wounds staining his torn clothing. He had taken hits, but nothing serious. Pain was just information, something to be noted and then ignored. He checked his captured communication device. The aliens were pulling back from the colony, regrouping. Their ground assault had failed because the humans, though outgunned, had fought back desperately. And now the Vakrians had lost their hunter teams in the forest. Jake made a decision. The children were safe in the cave for now, but the colony was still under threat, and people he cared about were in danger. Helen Morris, who had welcomed him to the academy. Ben Crawford, who worried about everyone. The other colonists who had become his friends. He couldn't protect the students and defend the colony at the same time. But maybe he didn't have to. Maybe he could end this entire attack by making the Vakrians understand what they were fighting. Jake gathered the most powerful weapons he had captured and began moving toward the colony. He traveled fast, using every shortcut and hidden path he had memorized during his years on New Haven. What would take a normal person 2 hours took Jake 40 minutes. As he approached the colony outskirts, he saw the devastation. Buildings were damaged, fires burned in several locations, and wounded colonists were being treated by medical personnel. The Vakrian ground forces had pulled back to regroup, but they were still in attack position around the colony perimeter. Jake found a communications array that was still functional. He powered it up and accessed the Vakrian military frequencies. It took him a moment to bypass their encryption, using codes he had memorized from their captured equipment. Then he spoke, his voice broadcast to every Vakrian warrior on the planet and to their ships in orbit. He spoke in their language, which he had learned years ago during previous conflicts. "This is Jake Morrison. You attacked my colony. You attacked my students. Human children under my protection. That was a mistake. In the command ship, Zekthor and Vrel heard the transmission. The war leader's eyes widened. The human spoke perfect Vakrian, with the accent of someone who had studied their culture deeply. I have disabled 36 of your warriors, Jake continued. They are alive, but they will not fight again today. I could have killed them all. I chose not to. That is what separates us. You kill for conquest. I fight to protect. Zekthor wanted to cut off the transmission, but he couldn't. Something about this human's voice commanded attention. I am one man, Jake said, his voice calm but carrying an edge of cold fury. One human, and I have stopped your entire assault. Imagine what humanity will do when they learn you attacked our children. Imagine what our military will do when they arrive. Vrel was frantically pulling up more information. He found Jake's voice signature in the Galactic military database and ran it through identification protocols. What came back made him feel genuine fear. War leader, Vrel whispered. I have confirmed his identity. This is the human called Reaper in their military legends. Other species have warnings about him in their combat manuals. The Shrell Empire still teaches about him in their military academies as an example of human combat capability. Jake wasn't finished. You have one chance. Leave this planet now. All of your forces. If you do, I will treat your wounded warriors and release them. If you don't, I will come for you. Every single one of you. And I promise you what I did to your hunter teams was me being gentle. The transmission paused for a moment. When Jake spoke again, his voice was colder. You wanted to send a message by attacking children. Let me send you one instead.
Humanity protects its young.
We don't just protect them with weapons or ships. We protect them with people like me. Monsters who become teachers because we want children to grow up in peace. But we remember how to be monsters when we need to. Zekthor's pride warred with his survival instinct. To retreat because of one human was humiliating. But the losses were mounting, and this human had proven far more dangerous than anticipated. You think you can threaten the Vakrian supremacy? Zekthor transmitted back. We are warriors. We do not flee from Jake cut him off. I'm not threatening you. I'm giving you a choice. Be warriors and retreat to fight another day, or be fools and die here. I've read your military philosophy. A tactical retreat is not cowardice. It's strategy. So be strategic, war leader Zekthor. The fact that Jake knew his name shocked Zekthor. How did this human know who he was? I know your name because I accessed your communications, Jake explained as if reading his thoughts. I know your ship positions. I know your force strength. I know everything about your operation. And I am telling you, as one military commander to another, you cannot win this fight. Not today, not against me. In the colony, Helen Morris and Ben Crawford heard the transmission through the damaged comm systems. They looked at each other in shock. That was Jake's voice, but it didn't sound like the gentle teacher they knew. It sounded like a military commander, confident and deadly. Who is he? Ben whispered. Helen shook her head slowly. I don't know, but I'm glad he's on our side. In orbit, Vrel spoke urgently to Zekthor. War leader, we should withdraw. This human is a known threat entity. Continuing this operation could bring serious consequences from both humans and the Galactic Council. We attacked a protected colony and attempted to harm juveniles. The political fallout alone? Silence, Zekthor roared. But doubt was creeping in. 36 warriors defeated by one man. An entire colony defense that should have been easy turned into a costly stalemate. And now this human was offering to release their captured warriors unharmed. Jake's voice came through again. I'm transmitting coordinates for your wounded warriors' locations. You have 10 minutes to make your decision. After that, I'm coming for your command ship. You cannot reach orbit. Zekthor snarled. No, but I can destroy your ground-based communication relay. And I know where it is. Without it, you can't coordinate your forces, and you certainly can't call for reinforcements. 10 minutes, war leader. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. Zekthor stared at his displays, his mind racing. Everything this human said was true. Without the ground relay, the operation would fall apart. And if humanity's military arrived before they withdrew, it would be a disaster. Vrel stood silent, waiting for orders. Around the command deck, other Vakrian officers watched their leader, waiting to see if pride would overcome tactical sense. The cave was completely dark when Jake finally returned. He had been gone for hours, and the children had heard distant sounds of fighting that had terrified them. Sophie had cried until she had no more tears. Lucas had tried to stay logical, but fear had crept in anyway. Danny had stayed at the front of the group, trying to be brave for the younger kids. Amy had held everyone together, repeating over and over that Mr. Morrison would come back. When a figure appeared at the cave entrance, Danny almost screamed. But then a familiar voice spoke. "It's okay. It's me. You can come out now." "Mr. Morrison?" Sophie's voice was filled with relief and joy. The children rushed toward him, their flashlights revealing Jake's condition. His clothes were torn and burned in places. He had cuts and bruises on his arms and face. He looked exhausted, leaning against the cave wall as if he might fall down any moment. But he was smiling. That same gentle teacher smile they all knew. "Are you okay?" Amy asked, her voice full of concern. "I'm fine. Tired, but fine. The bad guys are gone. They left the planet." "You're all safe now." "What happened out there?" Lucas asked. "We heard so much noise. Explosions and energy weapons firing." Jake knelt down, wincing slightly from his injuries. "The aliens came looking for us. I made sure they couldn't find you. Then I went to help the colony. Everyone there is safe too. The attack is over. Did you fight all of them?" Danny asked, his eyes wide. "I did what I had to do to protect you. That's all that matters." Jake looked at each child in turn. "Are you all okay? Nobody hurt?" They all shook their heads. They were scared and tired but unhurt. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. His mission had succeeded. Every single child was safe. "Can we go home now?" Sophie asked in a small voice. "Soon. I need to rest for a few minutes first. Then we'll head back to the colony." Jake sat down carefully, his body protesting every movement. Amy sat next to him. "You're really hurt, aren't you?" "Nothing serious. Just cuts and bruises. I've had worse. You keep saying that. But how many times have you been hurt like this?" Jake looked at her thoughtfully. She was a smart girl, always asking questions. She deserved some truth. "More times than I can count. It was part of my old job." "What was your old job?" Lucas asked, sitting down too. Soon all 15 children were gathered around Jake in the cave entrance. Jake was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Before I was a teacher, I was a soldier. A special kind of soldier who did very dangerous missions. I protected people who were in trouble. I stopped bad things from happening." "Like what we saw today?" Danny asked. "Yes, exactly like today. I learned how to fight, how to survive, how to win when the odds were against me. I did it for many years." "Why did you stop?" Amy asked. Jake smiled sadly. "Because I got tired of fighting. I wanted to do something good that didn't involve hurting people. I wanted to help kids learn and grow. Teaching seemed like the opposite of fighting. It seemed peaceful. But you're still really good at fighting," Lucas pointed out. "Yes, those skills don't go away just because you stop using them. It's like learning to ride a bike. Once you know how, you always know how." Sophie moved closer and hugged Jake's arm carefully, avoiding his injuries. "I'm glad you remembered how. You saved us." Jake felt his chest tighten with emotion. This was why he had become a teacher. These moments, when children looked at you with complete trust and gratitude, when you knew you had made a real difference in their lives. "You all were very brave," he said softly. "You stayed quiet and hidden just like I asked. You followed instructions perfectly. I'm proud of you." After resting for 20 minutes, Jake led the children back toward the colony. The walk took longer than usual because Jake's injuries made him move more slowly, though he tried to hide it. The children stayed close to him, none of them wanting to be far from their protector. As they emerged from the forest, they saw the colony in the distance. Emergency lights were on and people were moving around, cleaning up damage and helping the wounded. But everyone was alive. The Vakrians had caused destruction, but they hadn't killed anyone. Helen Morris saw them coming and ran toward the group. "Jake, children, thank God you're safe." She hugged as many kids as she could reach, tears streaming down her face. Ben Crawford was right behind her. He looked at Jake with new eyes, seeing the warrior hidden beneath the teacher's surface. "Jake Morrison, you have a lot of explaining to do." Jake smiled tiredly. "Can it wait until after medical attention and a hot shower?" "Yes, but we're having a very long conversation tomorrow." Medical personnel rushed to treat Jake's injuries. The doctors were amazed that he was still walking around with the amount of damage his body had taken. Burns, cuts, bruises, and a few cracked ribs. Any normal person would have collapsed from pain. Jake just sat quietly while they worked, accepting their treatment with the same patience he showed when teaching children. Parents came to pick up their kids, hugging them tight and crying with relief. Each child told their parents about what happened, about how Mr. Morrison had protected them. The stories spread through the colony quickly, growing a bit with each telling. Amy's parents found her talking to Jake as a doctor wrapped bandages around his arm. "Thank you," her father said simply. "Thank you for bringing our daughter home safe." Jake nodded. "She was brave out there. You should be proud of her." Later that night, after the children were all home and Jake's injuries were treated, he sat with Helen Morris and Ben Crawford in the damaged administration building. "I pulled your file," Ben said quietly. "Your real file, not the teacher employment record. It took some serious clearance to access it, but given what happened today, the military released it to me." "And?" Jake asked, though he knew what was coming. "Lieutenant Colonel Jacob Morrison, 20 years in special operations, missions on 30 different worlds, a combat record that reads like action movie fiction. They called you Reaper. You were a legend." Helen looked shocked. "Jake, why didn't you tell us?" "Why hide all of that?" "Because I wanted to leave it behind," Jake said honestly. "I wanted to be just a teacher. I wanted to help kids, not hurt enemies. When I came here 5 years ago, I thought I could finally be at peace." "But you couldn't," Ben said. "Not when danger came. You became that soldier again. Only when I had to. Only to protect the children." Jake looked at them both. "I'm sorry I lied about my past. But I'm not sorry about what I did today. I would do it again without hesitation." Helen reached over and squeezed his hand. "We're not angry. We're grateful. You saved lives today. All of our lives. The next few days were busy. Galactic Council investigators arrived to document the Vakrian attack. They interviewed witnesses, collected evidence, and reviewed the combat data. The Vakrians had violated multiple treaties by attacking a protected colony and attempting to harm children. War leader Zekthor faced a military tribunal. His defense that he didn't know about Jake Morrison was dismissed completely. The Council's lead investigator, an older alien named Tharlan who had fought alongside humans before, testified harshly. "Ignorance of human defensive capabilities is not an excuse," Tharlan stated. "It is a failure of intelligence and planning. The Vakrians should have known that humans protect their young with extreme prejudice. They should have known that even their teachers might be retired warriors. This attack was poorly planned and properly defeated. Zekthor was stripped of his rank and imprisoned. His military career was over. The Vakrian supremacy issued an official apology to humanity and paid reparations to New Haven Colony. But more importantly, a message spread through the galaxy. Humans were peaceful, yes. They preferred diplomacy and cooperation. But they were peaceful by choice, not necessity. And when you threatened their children, they would show you what they were truly capable of." At the Frontier Youth Academy, life slowly returned to normal. The damaged buildings were repaired. New security systems were installed, though everyone knew the best security was the quiet man teaching survival skills. Jake continued teaching as if nothing had changed. He was patient and kind with his students, making learning fun and engaging. But the children looked at him differently now. They had seen what he could become when necessary. One afternoon, 2 weeks after the attack, Amy stayed after class to talk to Jake. He was organizing supplies for their next camping trip, which he insisted would still happen once everyone felt ready. "Mr. Morrison, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Amy. What's on your mind?" "Are you going to leave? Now that everyone knows about your past?" Jake smiled at her. "Why would I leave?" Because being a teacher seems boring now compared to what you used to do, all the exciting missions and important operations." Jake stopped organizing supplies and gave her his full attention. "Amy, do you know what the hardest mission I ever had was?" She shook her head. "It was the first day I stood in front of a classroom full of children and tried to teach them something useful. I had faced enemy soldiers, terrorist cells, and dangerous situations that would give most people nightmares. But standing in front of kids and being responsible for their education, that scared me more than any combat mission." "Really?" Amy sounded doubtful. "Really. In combat, success or failure is immediate. You complete the mission or you don't. But teaching? The results take years to see. You